My entire life, I lived under a carefully constructed illusion. My father, a man I idolized, a man who represented stability, strength, and unwavering love, was not who I thought he was. He was a phantom, a chameleon, a master of deception, living a double life so meticulously crafted that it defied belief. And I, his devoted daughter, was unknowingly complicit in upholding this grand charade, until the day the truth exploded, shattering my world into a million irreparable pieces. It wasn't just a secret, it was an entire alternate reality, a parallel existence I never knew existed, complete with a second family, a second home, a second
Two
identity.
locations on the city map,
For
red
years,
strings connecting them,
our home
revealing
was a
secret lives.
sanctuary
Each
of
thread pulls back
normalcy.
the veil on a hidden
My
world.
childhood was idyllic, painted with the warm hues of family dinners, summer vacations, and the comforting rhythm of everyday life. My father, James, was the quintessential patriarch. He was a successful architect, respected in his community, always impeccably dressed, with a kind smile and a laugh that could fill a room. He was my hero, my first love, the man who taught me how to ride a bike, how to draw, how to believe in myself.
Yes, I
My
understand.
mother, Sarah,
I'll
was the
handle it.
gentle anchor of our family, a loving presence who managed our home with grace and quiet strength. We were a unit, a perfect trio, or so I believed. My younger brother, Michael, was born a few years after me, completing what I genuinely thought was the most conventional and loving family imaginable. Our life revolved around
I
predictable
beg you forgive me
routines.
for all the pain I've
Weekends were
caused.
for family
I am so
outings,
sorry.
trips to
Please
the
give me
park,
another chance.
museum visits, or long drives to the coast. Evenings were for homework, shared meals, and my father reading us bedtime stories, his voice a soothing balm against the darkness. He traveled for work occasionally, business trips he called them, to various cities across the country, sometimes lasting a few days, sometimes a week. These absences were always met with a quiet longing from my mother, and an excited anticipation from us children for his return, always bearing small, thoughtful gifts. He would call every evening, his voice a steady presence across the miles, assuring us of his love and his imminent return. We never questioned these trips. Why would we? He was a busy man, a dedicated professional, providing for his family. That's what fathers did. That's what my father did. As I grew older, a teenager navigating the complexities of high school and burgeoning independence, I started to notice tiny, almost imperceptible fissures in the facade. Nothing concrete, nothing alarming, just small anomalies that, at the time, I dismissed as quirks. My father had a peculiar aversion to surprise visits at his office. He always insisted we call ahead, even if we were just dropping off his forgotten lunch. He was meticulously organized with his work schedule, almost obsessively so, yet he often seemed to have blocks of time unaccounted for, days when he was working from home, but wasn't truly in his study. His phone was a fortress of privacy. He never left it unattended, always carried it with him, even to the bathroom, and he had a way of subtly turning the screen away if a notification popped up while I was nearby. There were also the fleeting expressions on my mother's face, moments of quiet sadness that she quickly masked with a smile, a slight tension in her shoulders when my father would announce another business trip. I attributed it to the usual marital stresses, the ebb and flow of a long-term relationship. I was a self-absorbed teenager, after all, more concerned with my own social life and academic pressures than delving into the nuances of my parents' marriage. I loved them both unequivocally, and their bond seemed unbreakable, the foundation of my entire existence. The first real crack appeared when I was in college, home for summer break. My father had announced a last-minute business trip to a city 3 states away, a place he'd visited before. He left early on a Monday morning, suit pressed, briefcase in hand, the usual ritual. My mother and I waved him off, a scene replayed countless times. Later that day, I was helping my mother clean out the attic, a task we usually dreaded but had decided to tackle with a renewed sense of purpose. Among old boxes of Christmas decorations and childhood toys, we found a shoebox tucked away, filled with old photographs. Most were familiar. Family vacations, holiday gatherings, snapshots of my parents when they were young and carefree. But then I pulled out a photo that made me pause. It was a picture of my father, looking younger, maybe in his late 20s or early 30s, smiling broadly. He was holding a baby, a little girl with a shock of dark hair, nestled comfortably in his arms. Beside him stood a woman I didn't recognize, an attractive woman with warm, dark eyes and a gentle smile. Her arm linked through his. They looked like a family. A happy family. It wasn't the quality of the photo that struck me, but the sheer unfamiliarity of it. My father had never mentioned this woman, this child. My mother, seeing my puzzled expression, took the photo from my hand. Her face, usually so composed, crumpled. A deep, agonizing sigh escaped her lips, and her eyes, filled with a pain I had never witnessed, met mine. He told me he stopped seeing her before we met, she whispered, her voice barely audible, raw with an ancient hurt. He said it was a mistake, a past he regretted. That was the first time I saw the lie, the first time I understood that the perfect narrative of our family might have a hidden chapter. My mother's words, "Stopped seeing her before we met," resonated with a hollow echo. It was a partial truth, a carefully crafted deception, but it explained the photo. I believed her then, wanted to believe her, because the alternative was too terrifying to contemplate. I pushed the unsettling image, and my mother's quiet anguish, to the back of my mind, convinced it was just a remnant of my father's life before us, a closed chapter. It was a convenient explanation, one that allowed me to maintain my comfortable illusions. Years passed. I graduated college, started my career, fell in love, and eventually got married. My father walked me down the aisle, his hand firm and reassuring, his eyes shining with paternal pride. He gave a heartfelt toast at my wedding, speaking of love, loyalty, and the sanctity of family. The memory of that photograph faded into a distant, uncomfortable memory, occasionally resurfacing, but quickly dismissed. Life moved on, and the rhythm of my own growing family began. The true unraveling began subtly, almost innocuously, during a routine family dinner. My brother Michael, always a bit more observant than me, mentioned something about Dad's new phone. "He got one of those dual SIM phones, right?" Michael asked idly, cutting into his steak. My father, who was usually quick to engage in conversation, suddenly seemed to freeze. His fork clattered against his plate. "What are you talking about, Michael?" he asked, his voice tighter than usual. Michael shrugged. "Oh, I just saw it on his desk the other day. 2 different numbers showing up on the screen. I thought it was pretty cool, like for work and personal stuff." My father quickly recovered, offering a strained laugh. "Ah, yes, that. My company issued me one for international calls. Very practical." My mother shot him a quick, unreadable glance, but said nothing. I didn't think much of it at the time, but Michael's innocent observation planted a seed of doubt, a tiny sliver of suspicion that began to sprout in the fertile ground of my subconscious. Then came the emails. My parents were planning a belated anniversary trip, and my mother, not being particularly tech-savvy, asked me to help her book some excursions. She gave me access to her email account, which she shared with my father for travel confirmations and family communications. As I scrolled through their inbox looking for hotel details, an email caught my eye. It was from a travel agency, addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Smith. My father's last name was Smith. The subject line read, "Your upcoming reservation details for the Caribbean cruise." My parents had never mentioned a Caribbean cruise. Their anniversary trip was to Italy. My heart began to pound. Curiosity, cold and sharp, seized me. I clicked on the email. The reservation was for 2 adults, departing in 2 months, heading to a luxurious cruise line. The names listed were James Smith and Maria Rodriguez. Maria Rodriguez. The name hit me like a physical blow. It was not my mother's name. It was not a name I recognized. My mind raced back to the old photograph in the attic, the woman with the dark eyes. Could it be her? The thought was absurd, impossible. My father, planning a cruise with another woman? It had to be a mistake, a clerical error, a spam email. I tried to rationalize it away, but the cold dread in my stomach refused to dissipate. I covertly searched my father's email for Maria Rodriguez. Nothing. He was too careful for that, I realized. But I had a name, a date, and a destination. I felt a knot of dread tighten in my stomach. I was no longer an innocent bystander. I was now actively looking, driven by a terrible compulsion to understand. I felt a profound sense of guilt, a betrayal of my father's trust, but the urge to uncover the truth was stronger than any moral qualms. My perfect family, my perfect father. Was it all a lie? My investigation began subtly, almost instinctively. I started paying closer attention to my father's habits, observing the patterns I had once dismissed. His business trips suddenly took on a new sinister light. I noticed he always left on a specific day of the week, often a Thursday or Friday, returning late Sunday or Monday. He always brought back gifts, but they were generic, mass-produced souvenirs, not the thoughtful, personalized items he usually picked out. His phone continued to be a fortress. I decided to start small. I used the information from the cruise email, the date, the destination, Maria Rodriguez. I searched social media. It was a long shot, but I was desperate. I typed Maria Rodriguez and the cruise line into Facebook. Dozens of results popped up. It was a common name. I refined my search, adding the cruise dates, then the specific ship. And then I saw it. A public profile, with a profile picture of a woman who looked strikingly similar to the woman in the old attic photograph. Her name, Maria Rodriguez. Her location, a town 2 states away from us, in the direction my father often traveled for his business trips. I clicked on her profile, my heart hammering against my ribs. My breath caught in my throat. There were photos. Photos of Maria, smiling, laughing, posing with a man. The man was my father. Not a younger version of him, but my father as he was now, a few years older, a few more lines around his eyes, but undeniably him. He was holding her hand, his arm around her waist, their heads tilted together in intimate poses. There were photos of them on beaches, at restaurants, hiking trails, and yes, on a cruise ship, with the exact dates from the email. My vision blurred. It was real. It was all real. But it didn't stop there. As I scrolled further, a new wave of nausea washed over me. There were children in the photos. 2 of them. A girl, who looked to be in her late teens, eerily similar to the baby in the attic photograph, and a younger boy, perhaps 10 or 11. They were smiling, happy, interacting with my father as if he were their own. He was playing with the boy, guiding the girl on a bike, celebrating birthdays. He was their father. My father. Their family photos were indistinguishable from my own childhood albums. The same warmth, the same laughter, the same sense of belonging. The girl even had a striking resemblance to me when I was her age. The world tilted on its axis. The initial shock was so profound, so utterly disorienting, that I couldn't breathe. My mind refused to process what my eyes were seeing. It was a glitch in the matrix, a terrible nightmare from which I desperately needed to wake up. But the images were stark, undeniable proof. My father, my steadfast, honorable father, had another family. An entire, fully formed life that existed parallel to ours, completely unbeknownst to us. I spent the next few days in a haze, replaying every interaction with my father, every memory, every business trip. Each moment was recontextualized, twisted into a grotesque parody of what I had once believed. The elaborate excuses, the guarded phone, the precise schedules. They weren't just quirks. They were the scaffolding of a monstrous lie. The gifts he brought back from his trips weren't souvenirs of his travels. They were tokens of guilt, attempts to appease the family he was actively deceiving. The sadness in my mother's eyes, the quiet tension. It wasn't just marital stress. It was the silent suffering of a woman who likely knew, or at least suspected, a deeper truth. The weight of this knowledge was unbearable. I felt a profound sense of personal betrayal, as if my own identity, my own history, had been built on a foundation of sand. Who was I, if my father, the man who shaped so much of my world, was a complete stranger? Who was my mother, if she had lived with this deception for decades? And what about my brother, Michael? Did he know? Was I the only one oblivious? I knew I couldn't keep this secret. It was a poison slowly eroding my soul. I had to tell my mother. But how? How do you tell the woman who gave you life that the man she loves, the man she built a home with, has been living a double life with another woman and children for decades? The thought alone was excruciating. I waited for a moment when Michael wasn't home, choosing an afternoon when my mother was gardening in the backyard, her back to me, lost in the quiet rhythm of tending to her roses. I approached her, my voice trembling as I called her name. She turned, her face peaceful, dusted with soil. "Everything all right, honey?" she asked, a gentle smile on her lips. I couldn't meet her gaze. I simply handed her my phone, open to Maria Rodriguez's Facebook profile, to a photo of my father holding his other daughter, a look of profound paternal love on his face. My mother took the phone, her brow furrowing slightly in confusion. Her eyes scanned the image, then widened. The color drained from her face, leaving her ashen. The garden shears slipped from her fingers, clattering onto the patio stones. She stared at the screen, her gaze fixed, unblinking. A low, guttural sound escaped her throat, a sound of pure agony that will forever haunt me. It wasn't surprise I saw in her eyes, not entirely. It was a deeper, more profound devastation. A confirmation of a fear she had perhaps harbored for years. A suspicion she had suppressed, hoped was untrue. It's true, isn't it, Mom? I whispered, the words catching in my throat. He has another family. She finally looked at me, her eyes brimming with tears, a raw, primal pain radiating from her. I knew, she choked out, her voice barely a whisper. I always knew something was off. The trips, the phone, the way he would sometimes look at me, like he was hiding something enormous. But I pushed it down. I wanted to believe him. He always had an explanation, always had a way of making me feel crazy for even thinking it. My mother confessed that she had found clues over the years, a strange receipt, an unfamiliar scent on his clothes, a slip of the tongue. Each time, she confronted him, and each time, he gaslighted her, accused her of being paranoid, of not trusting him, of trying to ruin their family. He was a master manipulator, twisting her doubts back on her, making her question her own sanity. She loved him, deeply and unequivocally, and that love had made her vulnerable to his lies, making her want to believe his reassurances, desperate to preserve the illusion of their happy home. The conversation that followed was a torrent of tears, anger, and revelations. My mother spoke of the emotional toll, the quiet desperation, the years of trying to reconcile the loving husband she knew with the distant, secretive man who would occasionally emerge. She spoke of her fear of losing him, of disrupting our lives, of the shame and humiliation that would come with such a discovery. She had chosen to live in denial, to protect us, to protect the fragile peace of our home. It was a choice born of love, but it had come at an immense cost to her own well-being. The next few days were a blur of hushed conversations, tearful embraces, and an overwhelming sense of loss. We decided to confront him together. Michael, when told, reacted with a mixture of disbelief and explosive rage, a reaction that mirrored my own initial feelings. He was younger, perhaps more innocent in his perception of our father, and the betrayal cut him even deeper. The confrontation itself was surreal, like a scene from a poorly written drama. We waited for him to return from his latest business trip. He walked in whistling a tune, briefcase in hand, oblivious. He saw our grim faces, our tear-stained eyes, and his casual demeanor instantly vanished. He knew. He must have seen it in our collective despair. My mother, her voice trembling but firm, held up my phone, showing him the pictures. James, she began, her voice cracking. Who is Maria Rodriguez? Who are these children? His face went white. The color drained from his eyes, leaving them hollow. He stammered, tried to deny, tried to invent another elaborate lie. But the evidence was too overwhelming, too irrefutable. We had the photos, the cruise itinerary, the years of his evasiveness, my mother's quiet suffering. There was no escape. He finally broke, collapsing onto the sofa, his head in his hands. He confessed, a torrent of shame and regret pouring out of him. He admitted to the affair, which had begun years before he even met my mother, an on-again, off-again relationship that had blossomed into a full-blown second family. Maria was the woman from the old photo, the one he claimed to have stopped seeing. He had never stopped. He had simply compartmentalized his life, building two entirely separate existences, two different versions of himself, each unaware of the other. He spoke of his love for us, for my mother, for Michael and me, insisting that his love for us was real, profound. But how could it be? How could a man claim to love one family so deeply while simultaneously building another, equally deep, equally real, in secret? His explanation was a convoluted mess of loneliness, youthful mistakes, fear of commitment, and then, once both families existed, an inability to choose, a cowardice that led him to maintain the deception rather than inflict pain. He was trapped, he claimed, a victim of his own lies, unable to escape the web he had woven. But we knew better. He wasn't a victim, he was the perpetrator. The confession offered no solace, only a deeper wound. It explained the mechanics of the lie, but did nothing to alleviate the profound sense of betrayal. The man we thought we knew, the father we idolized, ceased to exist. In his place was a stranger, a deceitful, manipulative individual who had built his life on a foundation of lies. The aftermath was catastrophic. My mother, utterly heartbroken, filed for divorce. The legal proceedings were agonizing, tearing our family apart in the most public and painful way. Our once private tragedy became fodder for gossip, our names whispered in hushed tones in our small community. The shame, the anger, the grief. It was an overwhelming tidal wave that threatened to drown us all. I struggled to come to terms with the fact that my entire childhood, my entire understanding of family, was a carefully constructed illusion. Every memory, every cherished moment with my father, was now tainted by the knowledge of his deceit. Was his laughter real? Were his hugs genuine? Or was every interaction a performance, a carefully choreographed act to maintain his dual existence? The trust was irrevocably broken, shattered into fragments too small to ever reassemble. I found myself questioning everything. My own judgment, my ability to discern truth from falsehood, the very fabric of my identity. If my father could be such a master of disguise, what other deceptions lurked beneath the surface of the world? It made me wary, cynical, and deeply guarded. Building relationships, trusting others, became a terrifying prospect. My relationship with my father became a fractured thing, riddled with resentment and a deep, aching sense of loss for the man he pretended to be. He tried to apologize, to explain, to beg for forgiveness, but the chasm between us was too vast, the betrayal too profound. He had not only betrayed my mother, he had betrayed us, his children, robbing us of an honest foundation, forcing us to redefine our entire family history. And then there was the second family. Maria, the other woman, the other mother. And the children. My half-siblings. What about them? They were innocent in all of this, victims of my father's deception just as we were. Did they know about us? Were they living under the same illusion, believing themselves to be his only family? The thought was heartbreaking. I found myself feeling a strange, complicated mixture of anger towards them for simply existing, and profound empathy for their inevitable pain when their own world would inevitably crumble. I learned that my father had maintained the second family in a town about a 2-hour drive from ours. He had a small apartment there, which he claimed was a work office, or pied a terra for late nights. He had created a separate life, a separate identity, a James Smith, who was a devoted husband to Maria and a loving father to their 2 children, Sophia and Daniel. Sophia, the girl in the picture, was only a few years younger than me. Daniel was Michael's age. Our lives had overlapped, unknowingly, for decades. We had walked the same earth, shared the same father, breathed the same air, completely unaware of each other's existence. The impact of this revelation extended far beyond my immediate family. My grandparents, my father's parents, were devastated. They had no idea. They loved Maria and the children, having been introduced to them as friends or distant relatives over the years, never suspecting the true nature of their relationship. The shame and heartbreak they experienced, realizing their son had lived such a lie, was immense. It tore through the extended family, leaving a trail of confusion, anger, and gossip. My mother, though deeply wounded, showed incredible resilience. She focused on rebuilding her life, finding strength she never knew she possessed. She deserved so much more than the deceit she had endured, and watching her slowly heal, slowly reclaim her sense of self, was a testament to her unwavering spirit. She eventually moved on, found happiness, and proved that even after such a profound betrayal, life could still hold joy. For me, the journey was longer, more complex. The betrayal had fundamentally altered my perception of trust and truth. I sought therapy, grappling with the trauma, the anger, the profound sense of loss. It took years to reconcile the image of the loving father I had idealized with the deceptive man who had shattered our lives. I learned that forgiveness was not about excusing his actions, but about releasing myself from the bitterness that threatened to consume me. It was a slow, arduous process. I never fully reconnected with my father. Our relationship remained strained, a fragile thread woven with residual pain and an undeniable distance. He lives with the consequences of his choices, a solitary figure haunted by the wreckage of his own making. He lost the trust of his first family, and the foundation of his second family was built on a lie, which inevitably imploded. Maria, upon learning the full extent of his deception and his other family, was equally devastated. Their family, too, was fractured, leaving Sophia and Daniel to grapple with their own version of the same painful truth. I never reached out to Maria or my half-siblings. The idea felt too raw, too complicated, too much like opening another wound. Perhaps one day, when enough time has passed, when the scars have truly healed, that might change. But for now, the weight of their existence, the knowledge of their parallel lives, remains a quiet ache in my heart. The experience taught me profound lessons about the complexities of human nature, the devastating power of lies, and the enduring strength of truth, no matter how painful its unveiling. It taught me that family is not just about blood. It's about honesty, trust, and unwavering integrity. It's about building a foundation that can withstand the storms, not one that crumbles under the weight of deception. My story is a stark reminder that beneath the surface of seemingly perfect lives, secrets can fester, hidden truths can lie dormant for decades, waiting for the opportune moment to erupt. And when they do, they leave behind a landscape forever altered, a testament to the devastating power of a double life. If you've ever faced a shocking family secret, or found yourself grappling with a truth that redefined your world, I want to hear your story. Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more real-life accounts of hidden truths and the powerful journeys of those who uncover them.